You wrote a piece about civilisational decline being a choice for the European Conservative. It came out in the week ahead of us recording this podcast. If civilisational decline is a choice, presumably civilisational renaissance is a choice as well. What prospects, or that's the wrong question, what would need to happen for that civilisational renaissance? What would we expect to see from politicians, from our institutions? Where would they need to start drawing lines in the sand?
Well, you nearly included sort of another right question in that. What do we have any prospects of seeing that decline reverse? Unfortunately, not in the near future if the Conservative Party continue committing absolute suicide and continue to be populated by, again, people who think their constituency is a global mass of undifferentiated human matter to be adequately managed by the United Nations and the civil service. But a great example of this is the aforementioned Palestinian refugee scheme debate was well attended by politicians of all parties agitating for the scheme, whereas Andrea Jenkins, Dame, and one of the only people courageous enough to put her name to a no-confidence letter in Rishi Sunak, hosted a costs of illegal migration debate, saying the exact costs on a particular people in a particular time and place, the English, for a bunch of foreign chancellors who they're forced to pay for, and 4 MPs turned up, only 2 of them because they had to. So it shows like their allegiances are not to a particular people. And so in order to reverse that civilizational decline, you need to change the mindset and those in the political elite. Currently, the mindset is universal, non-judgmental social liberalism, which is actually born of, and I'm going to break many hearts here, the classical liberalism that many people still in the anti-woke coalition cling to, still who revile the sort of traditionalist revivalists on the reactionary right. I mean, there's a data-driven Twitter account that Elon Musk likes to reply to. I think it's IO on Twitter. And the other day he said that attending the Latin Mass is founded in racism and anti-Semitism. Now, this fella is meant to be in coalition with folks like me, but it's actually often that their liberal priors, this sort of 1990s liberalism, unwilling to reflect on it being the fertile soil from which woke sprung, actually have more contempt for how tradition weighs like a dead hand on their conscience and is only against the left because they think the left will lead to the rise of the far right, including in nations which fought the Nazis actively. You know, we don't all have the same traditions. But the classical liberals believed in this like pre-civilizational state of nature where human beings are blank slates and we can be infinitely molded. That's the exact same logic we have that imports barbarians now. That logic was bought into, I think, from noble intentions after the Second World War, because, again, they were so afraid of the rise of the Fourth Reich, the repetition of the Holocaust, they wanted to ensure never again, that instead they said, okay, we need to have no particular allegiances to particular cultures, particular peoples, particular histories, because an excess of nationalism, because the Germans tried it twice and failed, might lead to the resurrection spectrally of Adolf Hitler inhabiting another body of some world leader. And the problem is, what that's led to is not only the complete deracination of culture, the contempt between generations that we're now seeing between the boomers and Gen Z, it's led to a lack of loyalty towards their own countries by people that are tasked with administrating it. But also accidentally, it's led to the mass importing of people that don't buy into the post-war story and are now every weekend and Wednesday in Westminster agitating for the genocide of Jews and the intifada against the United Kingdom and the death of the English as well. So ironically, it's majorly backfired. So frankly, we can reverse civilizational decline, but also we can kind of address that plenty of the concerns that even sort of centrists and light left people and some people, Jewish people who are buying into the liberal version of the post-war order, not like Yoram Hazony, who said each nation should have essentially what Israel has, which is, you know, high birth rate, national self-determination, defense spending, and the like, and a religious revival. Those people that are more liberal might be able to say, oh, actually, for a minute, you know, because our policy has led to undesirable consequences, maybe those on so-called reactionary right that we've been scaremongering about being the second career of Adolf Hitler for all this time might have some of the answers, and they might extend neighborly concern to us. So I think what we need fundamentally to reverse civilizational decline is to abandon liberalism, root and branch, and go back to Christianity and a defense of our particular national cultures, heritages, and peoples without a fear that we're going to be called racists.
Oh, well, that was my next question was going to be what you finished on there with that paragraph is, you know, where do we go from here to be able to form a sense of culture and a civilization in which to pass on? And I suppose I saw you speak about or make reference to C.S. Lewis's Abolition of Man, and you said on trigonometry, everyone should go and read it. And when you said that, I remember having read that a few years ago, and it was one of those moments where the scales start to fall from your eyes, where you realize that actually much of what came downstream of Lewis, you could see playing out in the day-to-day. So he makes the case that there are lots of complaints that people aren't conducting themselves properly. But what should you expect? And I think his quote was, we make men without chests and expect from them virtue and enterprise. We laugh at honour and are shocked to see traitors in our midst. And I suppose this is what we've been talking about today, right? Is all the different strands of thought which have been brought in to replace our original cultural inheritance has led to misconduct on a mass scale, or at least a kind of introspective life instead of, well, not introspective, you know what I mean? A self-serving way of life as opposed to one that's connected to everything else. And we're losing heroes. We don't see them anymore, and we complain about bad conduct. But we've stripped away all of the means in which people would have otherwise gotten them. Which is, here is your educational curriculum, which is based upon the Greco-Hebraic Christian traditions that has been around for thousands of years and has done us pretty well by building a whole civilization on it. So you're actually saying that you think the way we ought to go back is, tear up that school curriculum effectively and go and start bringing back the things that built the civilization in the first place. That's the way to stop it disintegrating further.
Yeah, we need to revitalize an unapologetic faith in ourselves and our heritage. And yeah, of course, talk about the ugly parts, but also talk about how we moved on from some of the most heinous crimes throughout history with the power of the belief in the dignity, the equal dignity, capacity for moral excellence in a human being, which is the principle of Imago Dei, which is solely located in Christianity. I mean, a perfect example of how self-effacing we are and essentially wedded to the religion of anti-racism, a sort of a belief that we are only defined with our modus operandi as a country and a culture by accommodating the outsider and liquidating our own identity, is Parliament. I mean, people don't realize the statues in Parliament Square are actually really telling. I mean, what have we got? Okay, Winston Churchill, fair enough, that should actually be our Holocaust memorial. I don't know why we're building a Holocaust memorial next to Parliament when we fought and defeated the Nazis and did so. That should be good enough. But Abraham Lincoln, okay, emancipator of slaves, not in England though. Nelson Mandela, okay, ended apartheid, was also an apologist for terrorists and tire burnings around the neck, so not a good fellow. And Oliver Cromwell, I mean, I know there are dissenting views, particularly among the Anglican Church, over which side they would have fought in the English Civil War. But again, disrupting the line of apostolic succession and entrenching Henry VIII's permanent divorce court hasn't done well for the strength of Christianity in public life over the centuries. Let's put it this way. So we should have a broader range of heroes. We should have Anglo-Saxon kings there. The idea that we don't, even if he's a mythic figure, have a statue of King Arthur or Robin Hood around there, for example. We're not telling ourselves the same sort of cultural stories of self-belief and conviction that other more barbarian civilizations, as in that quote that you read, are telling themselves, and then we're wondering why we're two blokes here, right? We're going to talk about Rome eventually, why we're on the precipice of being sacked like the Roman Empire. So yes, we need that. We need a revitalization of Christian ethos in public life. We need a revitalization of the curriculum. We also need to cool the tensions on the battle of the sexes. I mean, you're only going to get this through an individual level of, unless you legislate against the pill, which I doubt is going to happen, but walk away from fertility technologies and reproductive methods that are going to neuter you over time. Understand that, yes, a lot of the non-judgmentalism, a lot of the resentment built up between men and women, and that's on both sides, by the way, misandric feminism and those who seek to inherit the red pill mantle that say all women are the problem and don't get married to Western women. Hey, by the way, convert to Islam. They're also an issue. It's all about mitigating risk and managing insecurity. Well, in order to love, you have to be vulnerable. You have to address your own shortcomings. And yes, you can upgrade yourself to such a sufficient extent that you might encounter and attract someone like for like. But also there are active commercial incentives discouraging that, for example, dating apps. So if you're an older person, try and introduce two younger people that are single together because you're probably going to have their better interests at heart than some bureaucratic Silicon Valley company that has an interest in keeping them single and paying for said dating apps. Like, we need families, we need faith, and we need a revitalization of a forward-facing, self-believing education system again to properly instruct the next generation so that they don't have to battle upwards to reclaim tradition as Gen Z did.